How many times have we been asked to step out in faith, take a new job, and hope for the best? Reach out and invite a new acquaintance for coffee in hopes of them becoming a new friend. Sign up for an activity where you don't know anybody. These are little, everyday kinds of examples, not usually the situation where something goes badly, we end up in literal peril, but the fear is there nonetheless. Now let's think about Peter for a moment. He had been following Jesus, but learning from him, and he was still a little bit figuring out how this whole Jesus thing worked. And on this particular day, we see that Peter and the others let Jesus be so Jesus could pray, and they headed out in the boat. Now we remember that being in a boat is something that's comfortable for them, right? Like they're in their element here. Well, they have the living daylights scared out of them when Jesus comes walking toward them on top of the water. We don't hear the storm scaring them yet. We see them scared because Jesus is walking. Now, we could spend a lot of time, and there's scholars spending lots of time arguing about whether this happened or didn't happen. We can talk about what sorts of natural phenomenon might have occurred to allow this to be explained. But the fact of the matter is, the disciples are scared. They are scared of what they are seeing, and we are left with the oft-repeating biblical phrase, "Don't be afraid." This would be a great ending to the story, right? They're scared. Jesus says, "Don't be afraid." The end. Good. We can all remember to not be afraid. But the story doesn't end there. Jesus doesn't just admonish Peter to stop being afraid. And then Peter says, "Well, if it's really you, tell me to come out on the water too." Bold move. Questionably foolish move, right? But Jesus does. Jesus invites Peter by simply saying, "Come." And Peter does. Our story could end here. What a great ending. Don't know what to do? Ask for a next move. Do what it says. The end. But we don't end here either. It would be enough for me to stand here and just say, do what Jesus says and everything will work out just fine. But instead, the story continues. We're not afraid. We ask for something. We make a bold move. And the wind kicks up. And the fear sets in again. Life is kind of like this. Just when we feel like we've got it, the wind kicks up. Things get scary. That job is lost. The relationship is on the rocks. The crummy medical diagnosis is given. The house needs a repair. There's not enough money, etc., etc., etc. And we begin to feel like we are sinking. We begin to doubt. And some people might say, now, if you had enough faith, this wouldn't have happened. If you prayed hard enough, this wouldn't have happened, and other sorts of similarly not super helpful kinds of things. But when we do that, we miss the key moment. Peter, in the midst of fear, in the midst of panic, in the midst of uncertainty, in the midst of literal sinking, asks Jesus again for what he needs. Rescue me. And Jesus reaches out. Jesus reaches out as Peter is doubting. Jesus reaches out as Peter's faith is weak. Jesus reaches out as Peter is sinking. The same goes for us. Jesus reaches out as and after the wind has kicked up and things are scary. We are not left there to sink alone. Having fears doesn't stop Jesus. Us having doubts doesn't stop Jesus. Us having little faith, that doesn't stop Jesus. Jesus does Jesus' thing regardless of what we do. Now, sitting here without the wind blowing and the storm brewing, we might say that we could breathe a little bit easier if and when we remember that God holds us through the windy and scary moments of life. We might panic a little bit less if and when we remember that God gives us strength when we can't imagine taking one more step. We might pause in the midst of our sobbing if and when we remember that God weeps with us. And sure, we might realize Jesus' hand is reaching out a little bit sooner if we remember to ask. But whether we do any of this or not, whether we act differently in the situation, it doesn't change what God does. That's the amazing good news of this story. Jesus reaches out and grabs hold of us. The good news in this story is not that we're going to be able to defy science and do some miraculous thing like walk on water. The good news is Jesus reaches out and holds on tight. Friends, Peter takes that first step out of the boat in faith. And Jesus reaches out and grabs hold as fear claims him. Both of these are real. This image, some of you might have been pondering it as I've been talking, is by Nicolette Peñarada. The artist says, notice the layers. Might be kind of hard to see, but you can kind of see them in there. The foot that you see is perhaps walking confidently, or perhaps it's sinking. That hand could be Jesus' hand reaching out, or it could be Peter flailing. Both and can be true at different times for us. They can both be true at the same time even, just as it was for Peter. So it's okay today if we enter the story, if we enter this art piece, feeling confident as Peter was as he stepped out of that boat. We could enter the story, the art piece, sinking in panic. We could be entering confident that we are held tight by Jesus, assured that everything is going to be okay. We could be panicking. It's okay wherever we are. Because when we look to either side of us here in the church, when we look, if we're watching remotely, at how many other people are watching with us, or we look around and see how many people are here, we remember that we are not alone. We remember that sometimes Jesus reaching out and holding us comes in the hand of somebody next to us, offering a hand when we need it. We remember that sometimes we are that hand, helping the person next to us. Friends, we are not alone. We have each other on this journey, and we can cling tight and trust that Jesus has got us. When the winds of life kick up, and they're going to, we are not alone. Thanks be to God. Amen.